On Mother's Day, my millionaire son leaned across my kitchen table and asked, "Mom, are you happy with the $6,000 Evelyn sends you every month?" I set down my teacup so he wouldn't see my hands shake and answered softly, "Son, the church is keeping me alive these days." The color left his face like water draining from a sink. 46 months, $276,000. And I had been counting coins for my heart medication. Then the front door opened, and his elegant wife walked in, with no idea what was waiting for her in my kitchen drawer. My name is Margaret Hale, though everyone in Millbrook has called me Margot since before the interstate came through. I am 71 years old. I have lived in the same white clapboard house on Sycamore Lane for 44 years, the one with the crooked porch swing my husband Thomas hung the summer our son learned to walk. Thomas and I ran Hale Upholstery on Main Street for 31 years. We recovered every church pew in 3 counties, every funeral parlor chair, every banker's office sofa. My hands still remember the weight of the fabric shears. My fingers still carry the small white scars of 10,000 tacks. We were never rich, but we were never ashamed. Thomas used to say that a person's dignity is the one piece of furniture that should never need reupholstering, and I believed him. We raised one son, Nathan, in that house. I sewed his school clothes at midnight after 12-hour days in the shop. When he wanted to study computer science at Ohio State, we remortgaged the house we had just finished paying off. I never told him that. Thomas made me promise. "A boy shouldn't fly with his parents' sacrifices tied to his ankles," he said. So Nathan flew. And oh, how he flew. He built a software company from a rented desk in Columbus, and 11 years later, a firm in California bought it for more money than our shop earned in 3 decades of honest work. My son became a millionaire at 39. I remember the day he called to tell us. Thomas was already sick by then, the cancer moving through him, quiet and patient, the way bad things move. Thomas held the phone and cried, and then he laughed, and then he said, "Son, don't let it change what you love." 6 months later, my Thomas was gone. 39 years of marriage ended in a hospital room that smelled like lemon disinfectant, his hand in mine until his hand was just a hand. I tell you all of this not for pity. I tell you so you understand exactly what kind of woman was sitting in that kitchen on Mother's Day. A woman who had buried a husband, remortgaged a house in secret, and worked until her knuckles swelled, and who had never once, in 71 years, asked anyone for anything. That mattered. Because for almost 4 years, everyone believed I didn't need to ask. It began, as most quiet disasters do, with a kindness. 2 months after Thomas's funeral, Nathan came home for a weekend. He sat where his father used to sit, at the head of the kitchen table, and he looked wrong there, too big and too polished, like a showroom chair in a farmhouse. He took my hands in his and said, "Mom, I'm setting up a monthly transfer, $6,000 every month on the 1st. You'll never worry about money again. Dad would want this." I told him no. Of course I told him no. I had my widow's Social Security, the little annuity from selling the shop, my garden, my ways. But Nathan had his father's stubbornness and his mother's, which is a dangerous combination, and he wouldn't hear it. "It's already done," he said. "Evelyn handles all our accounts. She's brilliant with this stuff, Mom. She'll take care of everything." Evelyn. Let me tell you about Evelyn, the way I knew her then, before I knew her at all. Nathan met her at a charity gala in Columbus, the kind of event where people pay $400 a plate to feel generous. She was 34, elegant in a way that Millbrook women are not better, just different. Cream silk blouses that never wrinkled. A voice like a cool hand on your forehead. She had worked in wealth management before the wedding, and she spoke about money the way pastors speak about scripture, with authority and a hint of pity for those who hadn't studied it. When Nathan brought her home the first time, she looked at my hand-stitched curtains and said, "Oh, these are so charming, so authentic." I didn't know yet that in her language, authentic meant poor. They married in a vineyard in Napa. I sat in the 3rd row. Her family filled the first 2, still. She made my son smile, and after Thomas died, Nathan's smiles were currency I could not afford to question. So when he said Evelyn handles everything, I nodded. When Evelyn herself called me that week, the only time in 8 years she has ever called me first, I listened. "Margaret," she said, and her voice was warm as bathwater. "Nathan told me about the arrangement. I've set up a dedicated account for you so the funds are managed properly." You know how overwhelming banking can be at your age. You don't need to do a thing. Not one single thing. You don't need to do a thing. I have replayed that sentence 1,000 times since. At the time, it sounded like care. It was actually an instruction. Should I be watching for paperwork? I asked. Statements? Anything to sign? I'll handle all the paperwork, sweetheart, she said. Sweetheart, you just enjoy being taken care of for once. And then, nothing came. The first of the month arrived. No transfer appeared in my checking account at Millbrook Savings, the account I'd held since 1979. I waited. The 10th, the 15th, nothing. I thought about calling Nathan, and then I thought about how it would sound. Where is my money, son? The words made me physically ill. Thomas and I had never chased $1 from anyone in our lives, least of all our own child. So I told myself the paperwork was slow. Banks are slow. Rich people's banks are probably slower, with all those extra zeros to carry. The second month, nothing. The third month, nothing. By the fourth month, I had constructed the story that would keep me quiet for almost 4 years. Nathan changed his mind. Or Evelyn talked him out of it, sensibly, the way financial people do. And honestly, good. I hadn't wanted the money. I hadn't asked for it. A grown woman doesn't sulk over a gift that never existed. I folded the whole thing up like a bedsheet and put it away in the closet of things we do not mention. Pride. That was my sin in this story, and I'll confess it plainly. Pride kept me silent. Pride is a lock that only ever seems to work from the inside. What I did not know, what I could not have imagined, because my mind simply did not bend that way, was that the transfers had gone out from Nathan's account on the first of every single month. $6,000, faithful as sunrise. They landed in an account at Meridian Trust in Columbus, an account titled Margaret E. Hale, opened with my name, my date of birth, my social security number, and a signature that was not mine. An account whose only authorized user, whose debit card, whose online password belonged to Evelyn. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to see the years first. You need to feel them the way I felt them, one small humiliation at a time, because that's how this kind of theft works. It doesn't take your money all at once. It takes your life in slices so thin you keep telling yourself you're imagining the knife. The first year after Thomas died was the hungriest year of my life, and I don't only mean food. My widow's benefit came to $1,340 a month. The annuity from the shop added $410. The house was paid off, thank God, but a paid-off house still demands its tribute. Property taxes, insurance, the furnace that chose that January to die at 2 a.m. when it was 9 degrees outside. The repairman was kind. He was also $2,200. I paid him from the emergency envelope Thomas kept taped behind the water heater, and when that envelope was empty, there was no other envelope. Then my heart started its trouble. Atrial fibrillation, Dr. Feldman called it, which is a fancy way of saying that the muscle that had loved Thomas Hale for 39 years no longer kept proper time without him. The medication was $187 a month after Medicare did what little Medicare does. I want you to understand what $187 means at that arithmetic. It means the electric bill waits. It means chicken thighs, not breasts, and then it means no chicken at all. It means you learn which grocery store marks down the bread at 4 p.m. and you are standing there at 3:55 with your cart, pretending to study the jam. I never told Nathan any of it. He called every Sunday from wherever the money kept him. Austin, Singapore once, mostly their glass house in Columbus, 55 minutes and one entire universe away. "You good on everything, Mom?" he'd ask. And I'd look at the shutoff notice on the counter and say, "I'm just fine, honey. Tell me about you." Because in my mind, remember, there was no missing money. There was only a son who had offered once, thought better of it, and a mother with too much of his father in her to beg. And when he visited, this is the part that took me years to see clearly. He almost never visited alone, and he almost never visited long. Evelyn managed their calendar the way she managed everything, and somehow the calendar allowed my son 90 minutes in Millbrook every couple of months, always on the way to somewhere else. Evelyn would sweep in wearing her cashmere and her perfume that smelled like a department store's opinion of flowers, and she would set a bakery box on my counter. "We brought you a little something, Margaret." And then she would spend the whole visit redirecting. That's the word for what she did. Redirecting. If Nathan asked how the house was holding up, Evelyn said, "Oh, honey, before I forget, tell your mother about Marco's promotion." If he wandered toward the kitchen where the notices lived on the counter, she needed him to carry something from the car. Once. I swear this on Thomas's grave. Nathan opened my refrigerator looking for cream, and there was so little inside it that my stomach dropped. And before he could register it, Evelyn laughed her wind chime laugh and said, "Margaret, you're just like my grandmother. She never kept anything in the house either, fresh from the market every day, so European of you." And Nathan smiled and closed the door, and the moment closed with it. She was good. I need you to understand how good she was. Every visit was choreographed, and I mistook the choreography for a dance. The little cruelties I cataloged without knowing I was cataloging. The Christmas she gave me a $400 scarf. I found the receipt tucked in the box, and I still believe she left it there on purpose. The same year I gave them a quilt I had sewn for 2 months, and she said, "Oh, how sweet. This will be perfect for the guest room dog's basket." The way she introduced me at Nathan's 40th birthday party, "This is Nathan's mother? Isn't she precious?" She still lives in the little town where he grew up. Precious. Little. I stood in that room full of people who managed other people's money, holding a glass of wine that cost more than my medication, and I felt myself being shrunk in real time, folded down like a road map into something small enough to fit in her pocket. And the phone. This detail will matter later, so hold on to it. About 2 years in, my calls to Nathan started going differently. I'd call his cell on a Tuesday afternoon and Evelyn would answer. "He's in a meeting. Margaret, I'll have him call you back." Sometimes he did. Often he didn't. And when I mentioned it on Sunday, he'd frown and say, "Ev never told me you called." The third time that happened, Evelyn said smoothly that the message app on her phone had been glitching, and Nathan believed her, because why wouldn't he? He was a man in love, married to his own blind spot. Meanwhile, I was being kept alive by the First Methodist Church of Millbrook, and I mean that literally. It was Carol Whitcomb, the pastor's wife, who noticed. Carol has known me since we were girls plucking chickens for the county fair fundraiser. One Sunday, she caught my elbow after the service, looked at my coat. The same coat, its third winter, its collar gone soft as an old dog's ear, and looked at my face, and she didn't say a single word about either one. She just said, "Margot, the food pantry has too much this month and it'll spoil. You'd be doing me a favor." That's how church women rescue you in a small town. They make your survival a favor to them. So every Thursday, I did the church a favor. Canned peaches, rice, peanut butter. A dozen eggs when there were eggs. The Deacon's Fund quietly paid my heating oil the second winter. I found out by accident when the delivery man mentioned the invoice was settled. I cried in the driveway after he left, standing in the snow in my dead husband's boots. Not because I was ashamed of the church's love, because my son was a millionaire, and I was a charity case 55 minutes down the road, and I had chosen my pride over his help, or so I believed, and there was no one to blame but myself. That was the genius of her theft, you see. She didn't just take the money. She arranged it so that if I ever felt the lack of it, I would blame my own stubborn heart. The perfect crime isn't the one nobody discovers. It's the one where the victim writes the confession. 46 months, it went on. $276,000 in. And out the other side of that account, a lakefront condominium in her own maiden name at Buckeye Lake, $148,000 cash. A wine club, a tennis club, $19,000 to a cosmetic clinic in Cincinnati. A loan of $22,000 to her sister Corrine that no one ever intended to repay. I know these numbers now, the way I once knew my times tables. Every figure printed, highlighted, and sleeping in a manila folder. But numbers come later. First came the envelope. It was a Tuesday in late January, 16 weeks before that Mother's Day. I remember because Tuesday is when I walked to the post office, weather permitting, and the weather was not permitting. And I went anyway, because a woman with nothing keeps her routines the way other people keep their savings. In my box, along with the electric bill and a flyer for a hearing aid seminar, was an envelope from Meridian Trust, Columbus. Thick paper. A little window. Addressed to Margaret E. Hale, 214 Sycamore Lane. I had never banked at Meridian Trust in my life. I stood at the counter by the door, under the fluorescent light, and turned that envelope over twice, the way you'd turn over a bird that had flown into your window. My first thought was junk mail. My second thought was a scam. Carol is forever warning the church ladies about scams. It was neither. It was a real statement for a real account, and later I would learn why it had come to me at all. Meridian had updated its systems that winter and mailed year-end summaries to the address of record for every account holder. The address of record was mine, because my address had been used to open the account. For 46 months, Evelyn had the statement set to paperless, sent to an email address I had never seen. One system update, one envelope. That is the entire thread that the whole tapestry hung by. I think about that sometimes at night. I opened it at my kitchen table with Thomas's letter opener, the brass one shaped like a pheasant. Account holder, Margaret E. Hale. Year-end balance, $61,204.17. Total deposits for the year, $72,000. 12 deposits of $6,000 on the first of every month from N. Hale. I read it 4 times. I am not ashamed to tell you that the 4th time, my hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled like a leaf in wind. Because I understood 2 things at once, and they arrived together like a thunderclap after lightning. My son had never stopped. Not for one single month, in 4 years, had my boy stopped taking care of his mother. And someone had been standing between his hands and mine the entire time, catching what he sent. Then I saw the transactions. Debit card purchases. Saks. A restaurant called Lindy's 11 times. Something called Shorewood Property Group. A monthly transfer out to an account ending in 4,471. Whoever was spending my son's love was spending it well. I want to be honest with you about what I did next, because this is where some women scream, and some women call their sons in tears. And I understand those women, I do. But I am the widow of Thomas Hale, who once discovered his business partner skimming the register and said nothing for 5 weeks. 5 weeks. While he quietly photographed the books and then laid it all on the table so completely that the man signed over his half of the shop by Friday. Never show a card, Margot, Thomas told me that night, until you're holding the whole deck. So I did not scream. I sat in my cold kitchen until the light went blue, and I let the pain move through me like weather. The hurt, the humiliation, 4 years of marked down bread and church peaches, while $61,000 slept in an account wearing my name like a stolen coat. I let myself feel every bit of it. And then, somewhere around supper time, the feeling changed into something else. Something quieter and much more dangerous. I made a cup of tea. I got a pencil. And I started a list. Because here is what I knew that Evelyn did not know. I may not have a wealth management background, dear, but the name on that account was mine. And in this country, a woman's name is not a decoration. The decision, when it finally set, didn't feel like fury. It felt like a bone going back into joint. There's a click, and then, after all that grinding, everything simply works again. I was done being redirected, done being precious. I would not confront her with one envelope and let her spin it into a misunderstanding. Oh, Margaret, it was a surprise fund for you. Oh, Margaret, you're confused. You know how you get. No. She had spent 4 years building her story. I would take 16 weeks to build mine, and mine would have receipts. But a woman my age doesn't storm a bank in Columbus alone. I needed someone who knew where banks keep their soft places, and I knew exactly whose kitchen to sit in. Dolores Whitfield managed the Millbrook Savings Branch for 29 years before she retired, and she has been my friend for 50. She is the one who approved our remortgage in 1994 and never breathed a word of it, not even to her husband. She wears reading glasses on a chain of red beads, she takes her coffee black as a deacon's shoes, and she can read a bank statement the way a hunter reads snow. I walked to her house that Thursday with the Meridian envelope in my coat pocket, over my heart, where it had lived for 2 days like a coal. She took one look at my face and put the kettle on without asking a single question. That's 50 years of friendship. She made me sit and eat a slice of banana bread first, because Dolores believes no crisis should be examined on an empty stomach. Then I laid the statement on her yellow kitchen tablecloth and said, "Tell me what I'm looking at." She read it the way she reads everything, twice fast and once slow, her finger moving down the columns. Somewhere in the middle, her finger stopped, and her mouth went into a flat line I hadn't seen since a loan officer once got fresh with her in 1987. "Margot," she said, "did you open this account?" "No." "Did you sign anything?" "Anything at all. Ever. A birthday card at their house? A form Evelyn said was for insurance? Anything?" I thought hard. 3 years ago, she had me sign something she called a beneficiary update. 2 pages. She held the folder while I signed. Dolores took off her glasses and let them drop against her chest on their red beads, and she looked at me across 50 years, and she said, "Honey, this is identity theft of you. This is your name, your social, your address, and I'd bet this house it's your signature traced off that beneficiary form or forged outright. And that," she tapped the balance, "means every dollar in this account is legally yours, and every dollar she moved out of it, she stole. Not from Nathan, from you, from me," I repeated. "There's a mercy hiding in her arrogance," Dolores said, and here her voice took on the old branch manager crispness, the tone that used to make tellers stand up straighter. "She put it in your name to hide it from Nathan. Separate account, wouldn't show in their joint banking, and if it ever surfaced, why, look, it's a fund for his dear mother. She was building her alibi. But an alibi in your name is a door with your key in it. You walk into that Meridian branch with your driver's license and your social security card, and you are the account holder. They have to deal with you. She has no more legal right to that money than the mailman." I sat with that. Outside, snow was starting again, small and dry. "What would you do," I asked her, "if you were me?" Dolores poured us both more coffee, and she took her time, because she is not a woman who spends words she hasn't counted. "First," she said, "I would not tip her off. You touch that account too soon, she gets an alert, and she has weeks to get her story straight before Nathan hears anything. Second, I'd get the full history. Every statement back to the first deposit and the account opening documents, especially the signature card. Third," and here she reached over and took my hand, and her hand was old and mine was old, and together they looked like 2 winter branches. "Third, Margot, you get a lawyer before you get angry. Anger is a poor accountant." Then she said the thing I carried with me through everything that came after. She said, "They all thought Thomas was the sharp one, because he did the talking. I banked for both of you for 30 years, and I'll tell you what I told my tellers. Watch the quiet one. The quiet one counts." I walked home through the snow, and for the first time in 4 years, I was not cold. The plan had 3 stages. I wrote them on an index card and kept it in my recipe box, filed behind the card for Thomas's mother's pot roast, because no one in the history of the world has ever gone looking through an old woman's recipe box. Stage 1, get the records. Stage 2, get the law. Stage 3, get the moment. Stage 1 took a bus ticket and the best acting of my life. On a gray Tuesday in February, I rode the 8:15 into Columbus, wearing my good church coat, and I walked into the Meridian Trust branch on East Broad Street with my license, my social security card, my property tax bill for proof of address, and that year-end statement. My heart was doing its offbeat waltz the whole way, and I told it, "Not today, old girl, we have work to do." A young man named Devon took me to his desk. 26, maybe, with kind eyes and a tie his mother probably bought him. I told him the truth, or a careful cut of it. I was Margaret Hale, this was my account, I'd been letting a family member manage it, and I wanted to review the complete history and update my access. All true, every word. Dolores had coached me on this. Never lie to a bank, Margot. You don't need to. The truth is your best weapon. Just serve it in courses. Devon pulled up the account, and I watched his young face do arithmetic that had nothing to do with numbers. He saw the balance. He saw the 4 years of activity. He saw the 71-year-old account holder in front of him who could not answer the security question about the email on file because I had never seen it. To his credit. And I will praise this boy till my last day. He didn't get suspicious of me. He got suspicious for me. He called over his manager, a woman named Mrs. Okafor with silver-framed glasses, and Mrs. Okafor asked me quietly if I recognized the signature on the account opening card, and she turned her screen around. There it was. Margaret E. Hale, in handwriting that was almost mine. Almost. My capital M has a little hesitation in the second hump. Arthritis has its own penmanship. And this M was smooth as a skating rink. Whoever wrote it had copied a healthy woman's memory of my hand. "No, ma'am," I said. "I did not sign that." The room got very still, the way rooms do when a word like fraud walks in and takes off its coat. Mrs. Okafor asked if I wanted to freeze the account immediately. And this is where 16 weeks of patience began in earnest, because everything in my chest screamed, yes, seize it, slam the door. And instead I heard Dolores's voice. You touch it too soon. She gets an alert. Not yet, I said. What I want first is every statement from the account opening until today, printed, and a copy of that signature card. And I would like to add an alert that comes to me, to my address, by mail. If any withdrawal over $500 occurs, can you do that quietly? Mrs. Okafor looked at me for a long moment over her silver glasses. She was reading the whole story, I think. Women like her have seen every sad shape money can twist a family into. Mrs. Hale, she said, we can do that quietly. And then she said something that nearly undid all my composure. And when you're ready to make noise, we'll be here for that too. I rode home with 46 months of statements in a canvas bag on my lap, and I read them at my kitchen table for 3 nights straight, a highlighter in my fist like a small yellow torch. I made columns. Deposits from Nathan, $276,000 to the dollar. Cash withdrawals, $31,000. Transfers to the account ending 4,471, which the statements helpfully labeled E. Cross, Evelyn's maiden name, $34,600. Shorewood Property Group in a cascade of payments across one autumn. $148,000, which a call to the county recorder's office, they're very helpful, the recorder's office, and it's all public record. Every deed in America is public record. Remember that match to a lakefront condominium at Buckeye Lake, deeded to Evelyn Cross. Not Hale, Cross. She hadn't even put her married name on it. She was building a life raft off my son's ship and caulking it with his mother's hunger. The wine club, the tennis club. Lindy's, 11 dinners, and I promise you, I was not at any of them. $19,000 to Aesthetica Cincinnati, $22,000 marked C. Cross, the sister, Corrine. And in 46 months, the number of dollars from that account that had reached the woman whose name was on it, the woman eating pantry peaches on Sycamore Lane, 0. I looked for even one. A birthday check, a grocery card, 0. I sat back that third night, and I did something that surprised me. I laughed. Alone in my kitchen at midnight, 71 years old, I laughed until I had to hold the table, because there is a kind of clarity that arrives dressed as absurdity. 4 years I had blamed my own pride. 4 years I had rationed pills and blessed the Deacon's Fund. And the whole time the money was there, wearing my name, buying her a Lakeview. It was so enormous, so complete, that grief was simply too small a room for it. So I laughed, and then I cried, and then I made tea, and got out the index card, and drew a line through stage 1. Stage 2 was Samuel Ochoa. Samuel Ochoa has an office above the flower shop on Main Street, 1 paralegal, and a reputation in 3 counties for being unbeatable and unbuyable. He handled Thomas's estate. He is 60, shaped like a filing cabinet, and he keeps a jar of butterscotch candies on his desk that I believe are older than his paralegal. I brought him my canvas bag on a Friday in March. He read for 40 minutes without speaking, which for a lawyer is a religious experience, and when he finished, he took a butterscotch, unwrapped it very slowly, and said, "Margaret, do you understand what you have here? I have proof my daughter-in-law stole $276,000. You have that?" He agreed. "You also have forgery of a financial instrument, identity theft of an elder, and a pattern of concealment. That phone business, those intercepted messages, that goes to intent. This isn't a family squabble, Margaret. In the state of Ohio, this is multiple felonies. If you walk this bag into the county prosecutor's office, that woman is very likely going to prison. So before we go one step further, I need to hear you say out loud what you actually want. Because those are 2 different roads, and they fork right here in this office. I had thought about it, riding buses and highlighting statements. I thought about it lying awake, listening to the furnace. What did I want? I wanted the truth to land on Evelyn Cross with its full weight in front of the people she'd fooled. I wanted my son to know he had never once failed his mother. I wanted the money back. Not for greed, you understand, but because letting a thief keep the spoils is a lesson too, the wrong one. And I wanted. This is the part that took me longest to admit. I wanted to be the one who decided what happened to her, not because I craved the power, Because for 4 years, she had decided everything about my life without my knowledge, and the scales don't balance until the deciding changes hands. I want it back, I told Samuel. All of it. I want it done in daylight, in front of my son. And I want whether she goes to prison to be my choice, not my tempers. Samuel nodded slowly, the way he does, like a man agreeing with gravity. Then, here's how we build it. Over the next 6 weeks, quietly, methodically, we built it. A forensic document examiner in Columbus, a precise woman named Dr. Lehner, who has testified in federal court, compared the Meridian signature card against 30 years of my genuine signatures, from mortgage papers to Christmas cards. Her written opinion: the signature was a simulation, a forgery, with the confidence level experts use when they're being polite about certainty. Samuel drafted a sworn affidavit of my account. Every date, every missed transfer, every intercepted call, the beneficiary form, all of it. He prepared a demand letter that could be filed as a civil complaint within 1 business day if needed. Conversion, fraud, unjust enrichment, with the condo specifically named as a traceable asset. And through Mrs. Okafor, once the file was complete, we did the thing I'd been saving. On the last day of April, the account was frozen and flagged for fraud investigation, with the remaining $61,204.17 secured. Any card swipe, any transfer attempt would decline. 12 days before Mother's Day, the trap was set, and it was set the way Thomas would have set it, so completely that there was nothing left to argue about, only things left to admit. And here, I have to confess the strangest part of those 16 weeks, the performance. Because life didn't pause while I built my folder. There was Easter dinner at their glass house in Columbus, me in my good church coat, Evelyn air-kissing my cheek. "Margaret, you look thin. Isn't she thin? Nathan, I worry." While under my arm in my handbag sat a copy of her forged signature card. There were Sunday calls where I said, "I'm just fine, honey," in the exact voice I'd used for 4 years, except now the words were bait instead of surrender. I learned something about myself in those weeks that I'm still deciding how to feel about. I am an excellent actress. Maybe every woman my age is. We've spent our whole lives being told what to feel and when to smile. Turns out all that training is a loaded gun. It just matters who's aiming it. The hardest performance was with Nathan. Looking at my boy across a dinner table, knowing what I knew, that he had never abandoned me, that his faithfulness had been embezzled along with his money, and not telling him. Some nights I nearly broke. I would pick up the phone and put it down. But Samuel had been blunt. If Nathan found out early, everything would detonate on Evelyn's timetable. She'd have days to cry, to spin, to lawyer up, to make it a misunderstanding, a surprise fund, poor, confused Margaret. The truth needed to arrive whole, all at once, with no room to breathe around it. So I waited for the moment. And then, because God, I have decided, has a taste for symmetry, the moment chose Mother's Day. Before the moment, though, came the overhearing. I need to tell you about the overhearing, because it was the last piece of certainty I ever needed. The piece that turned my resolve from steel into something harder. It was the last Saturday of April, Nathan's 44th birthday dinner at the Glass House. 14 people, catered, the kind of party where the flowers have a designer. I had taken the early bus and arrived, as old women do, precisely on time, which in that world means 40 minutes early. The caterers let me in. Evelyn didn't know I was in the house. I was looking for a bathroom down the marble hallway when I heard her voice through the cracked door of her study in the low, quick register women use for the truth. She was on the phone. With Corrine. I could tell, because with her sister, Evelyn's vowels go back to Dayton. No, Corey, listen. The card declined, I told you, twice, at the club, in front of Bitsy Harmon. It's a bank error. It has to be, I'll go in Monday and raise hell. A pause. Then, and I will remember this until I am dust. Don't be stupid. Of course he doesn't know. He's never once looked. 4 years, he's never once looked. He signs what I put in front of him, and he thinks his mommy is up there in Hooterville living like a queen on his money. A laugh. Her real laugh. Not the wind chime one. Her real laugh has gravel in it. Please. The woman irons her paper napkins. Even if she noticed, who's she going to tell? She can barely work her own phone. By the time anyone untangles anything, the condo's mine free and clear, and honestly, Corey, after 4 years of playing nurse to that whole family's little feelings, I've earned every. I didn't hear the rest, because a caterer came through the hall with a tray, and I moved to the powder room, closed the door, and stood with both hands on the sink, looking at a 71-year-old woman in the mirror. Here's what I want you to understand about that moment. It didn't hurt the way you'd think. The financial theft, strangely, I had made a kind of peace with. Money is money, and I had known hungrier decades. But he's never once looked. That was contempt for my son, my boy who signed what she put in front of him because he loved her and had no reason on this earth not to. And she can barely work her own phone. That was contempt for me, yes, but bigger than me. It was contempt for every woman who ironed napkins and plucked chickens and remortgaged houses in secret so that boys could fly. She thought invisible meant blind. She thought quiet meant empty. She thought old meant over. I looked at the woman in the mirror, and the woman looked back at me, and I swear to you, we smiled at the same time. Then I flushed the toilet for the sake of the caterers, walked back down that marble hallway, and spent 3 hours being precious. I complimented the flowers. I let Evelyn tell the story about my refrigerator. So European, to Bitsy Harmon, and I laughed along. I hugged my son goodbye and told him I'd see him soon. On the bus home in the dark, I took out my index card, and next to stage 3, I wrote 2 words, Mother's Day. Because Nathan had already told me he was coming. Alone, he thought, for the morning, before Evelyn's brunch thing. And I had decided that on the one day of the year set aside for honoring mothers, my daughter-in-law was going to learn exactly which mother she had spent 4 years dishonoring. I spent that week the way generals spend the night before. Samuel and I went over the folder one last time. The statements with their yellow highlights, the deed, the signature card, Dr. Lehner's report, the affidavit, the demand letter with its blank dateline waiting like a loaded spring. I baked, because my hands think better when they're busy. And on the second Sunday of May, I put the folder in my kitchen drawer, under the tea towels Thomas's mother embroidered, and I put the kettle on, and I waited for my son. He came at 10, with tulips and a bakery box, and he looked tired in the way successful men look tired, like a house with all its lights on and nobody home in half the rooms. We sat at the kitchen table, his father's table, and drank tea, and he told me about work, and I watched my only child and thought, in 1 hour, your world changes. Forgive me, it has to. I didn't have to steer at all, in the end. Providence steered, because Nathan set down his cup, turned it a half circle on the saucer the way he's done since he was 9 years old and nervous, and said, Mom, can I ask you something, and you'll tell me the truth? He looked up. Are you happy with the $6,000 Evelyn sends you every month? Because, I don't know, something's been off. Ev's been strange about money for weeks, jumpy, and Friday some bank called the house and she about tore the phone out of the wall. And I realized on the drive up that in 4 years, you have never once mentioned it. Not thank you, not anything, which isn't like you. You write thank you notes to the mailman, so I need to hear it from you. Are you happy with it? 46 months I had waited. 16 weeks I had planned. And when the moment came, all my rehearsed openings dissolved, and what came out was just the truth, soft as bread. Son, I said, the church is keeping me alive these days. The silence that followed had furniture in it. I watched the sentence go into him and travel, watched him try 3 times to make it mean something else. What? Mom, what does that mean? The church is. It means the food pantry on Thursdays, honey. It means the deacons paid my heating oil 2 winters. It means I have never received $1 of the money you sent. Not the first month. Not this month. Not ever. That's not. He stood up, sat down. His hands were flat on the table like a man on a boat. Mom, I've seen the transfers. 4 years. They go out on the 1st. I've seen them. They go to your account at Meridian Trust, I said. An account opened in my name in June, 4 years ago, with my social security number at this address. An account I learned existed 16 weeks ago when a statement came to my mailbox by mistake. And that exact moment, because God has a taste for symmetry and, apparently, for theater, is when we heard the front door. She had come after all. Later, I'd learned Nathan's questions that week had spooked her badly enough that she couldn't stand him being alone with me. She'd canceled her brunch and driven up behind him. She swept into my kitchen in white linen and gold sandals with a boutique gift bag on her wrist, the wind chime voice already going. "Happy Mother's Day! Margaret! I couldn't let Nathan hog you all to him!" And then she saw our faces, and the chimes stopped mid-ring. "Evelyn," Nathan said, and I had never heard my son's voice sound like his father's until that morning. "Sit down. What's going on?" Light. Amused. A woman stepping over a puddle. "Why do you two look like someone died?" "Mom says she's never gotten the money. Any of it. 4 years." And I watched her do it. I want to describe this precisely, because I had spent 16 weeks predicting it and she performed it nearly to the letter. First, the little laugh. Then the pivot to pity. Oh no, Nathan, honey." She set down the gift bag and lowered her voice to the register people use near hospice beds. "Sweetheart, we've talked about this. Margaret's been slipping." The confusion, the repeating. "I didn't want to worry you, but there have been so many little incidents." She turned to me, her eyes swimming with manufactured tenderness. "Margaret, sweetheart, the money goes into your account every month. Your account. We set it up together. Don't you remember? You signed the papers with me. It's all right. This happens at your age. It's nothing to be ashamed." "Which papers, dear?" I asked. The gentleness of my voice unsettled her more than shouting would have. I saw the first flicker. The account papers, Margaret, at the bank. "I've never set foot in a Meridian Trust in my life," I said, "until this February. But you're right that somebody signed my name." I got up, my knees announcing the moment, as knees do. And I went to the drawer, and I moved aside the embroidered tea towels, and I laid the folder on the table between the teacups. "Nathan," I said, "open it." The first page was the signature card, with Dr. Lehner's report clipped behind it. The second was the year-end statement, highlighted. Then 46 months of statements. Then the deed. Shorewood Unit 14, Buckeye Lake, recorded to Evelyn Cross. Then the ledger I had written out by hand, in my careful, arthritic, absolutely unmistakable penmanship, because I wanted my son to see the totals in his mother's real hand next to the forgery of it. Deposited by my son, $276,000. Received by his mother, $0. Nathan read the way people read telegrams in old movies. Everything at once and nothing in order. Lindy's. Aesthetica. C. Cross, $22,000. And when he reached the deed, his finger stopped on the name the way Dolores's finger had stopped, and he said, very quietly, "Cross, just the name, just her name, the one she'd kept in reserve like a fire escape." Nathan. Evelyn's voice had changed registers entirely now. Brisk, managerial, the wealth management voice. "I can explain the structure. It's a protective arrangement, an estate strategy. The condo is an investment held for the family. Everything is recoverable. This is what I do. This is what I do. You told me she was going senile. He didn't shout it." That was the terrible thing. He set it down like a stone on the table. Friday, when the bank called. "You told me your card issues were fraud. Someone had stolen your identity." A sound came out of him that wanted to be a laugh. Someone had stolen an identity, Ev. You were just 11 numbers off about whose. I was protecting this family's assets. She was eating from a food pantry. And there it broke, all of it, 4 years of it, out of my gentle son in one crack of thunder that rattled the teacups. My mother, Evelyn, was choosing between heat and heart medication while that scarf. You bought her that scarf with her own. He had to stop. He put his hand over his mouth like a man trying to hold his own soul in. And Evelyn, I will give her this. She was a fighter to the last plank of the ship. Evelyn turned to me, dropped the tenderness, dropped the manager, and showed me, for one honest moment, the gravel. "You did this," she said. "You sat there for months with your little folder, playing sweet, letting me. You performed." "Yes," I said. "I learned from the best in the business. You could have come to me. We could have resolved this quietly, like family. Like family." I folded my hands on the table. I had waited 16 weeks, and I was not going to hurry the only paragraph that mattered. "Evelyn, dear, I heard you at the birthday party. on the phone with Corinne in your study. I'd come early. You know how the precious old thing is always early. I heard he's never once looked. I heard she can barely work her own phone. I heard exactly what 4 years of being family to you meant, so let me tell you what it meant to me. It meant $187 a month for the medication that keeps my heart in rhythm, and the months I cut the pills in half. It meant Carol Whitcomb pretending the pantry had too much. It meant standing in the snow in my dead husband's boots, crying because I believed my son had thought better of loving me, because you built it so I would blame myself. And I did, Evelyn. For 4 years, I did. That was the theft. The money was just the paperwork. The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the porch swing chain moving in the wind, the one Thomas hung. So here's what has already happened, I said, so that no one wastes breath negotiating with me. The account is frozen. That's your declining card. You'll want to stop blaming the bank. The remaining $61,204 is secured under my name, which was, after all, so thoughtfully put on everything. A forensic examiner has certified the forgery. My attorney, Mr. Ochoa, you met him at Thomas's funeral, the one you called Small Town, holds an affidavit, the complete file, and a civil complaint naming the condominium, ready to file tomorrow morning. And a copy of everything. And here I looked at her steadily. Sits with instructions in a safe place, because I watch enough television to know better than to keep only one. Evelyn sat down. Finally, actually, sat. Not the way a woman sits, the way a building does. The prosecutor's office, I went on, is a phone call Samuel is rather eager to make. Elder financial abuse, identity theft, forgery. He says the word felonies, the way some men say grandchildren. Whether he makes that call is the one thing that has not been decided. And it will be decided by me, not by your tears and Evelyn. I say this with real admiration. They're coming. I can see you loading them. Save them. They spin like counterfeit here. What followed was the reckoning, and if you have lived any life at all, you know reckonings are never clean. They don't happen in one scene like on television. They happen in waves, over weeks, and every wave takes a different piece of the shore. That first hour, Evelyn ran through her repertoire like a woman going through her purse for keys that aren't there. She tried indignation, lawyers of her own, defamation, you'll regret this. Samuel's demand letter, which Nathan read aloud in his father's voice, took care of that. She tried the breakdown, and some of it, I think, was even real. There is usually a genuinely frightened person somewhere inside a con. It's just never the person they were pretending to be. She talked about pressure, about Nathan's world, about feeling like an outsider with his money, about Corinne's debts and her father's failures back in Dayton. Nathan listened to all of it standing by the window, and when she finished, he said the saddest true thing said in my kitchen in 44 years. I would have given you everything you took. All you had to do was not take it from her. Then he picked up the tulips he'd brought me, filled a vase, set them on the table like a man performing the last normal act available to him, and told her to go to her sister's. And here's where I must be honest and tell you the reckoning did not divide the world neatly into my side and hers, because reckonings never do. Corinne called me that same night. Corinne, who had banked $22,000 of my hunger, and she defended her sister with a fury that almost impressed me. I was a manipulative old woman. I had entrapped Evelyn. Families handle things privately, she said. And I said, so I've spent 4 years learning, and hung up gently, because gently was more than she'd earned and exactly what I could afford. 2 ladies at the tennis club apparently heard a version where I was senile and vindictive. Bitsy Harmon, of all people, heard the true version from the club manager whose desk had processed the declined card, and Bitsy, God bless the Bitsy Harmons of this world, made sure the true version won. Evelyn herself broke in stages. The brisk lawyer she hired lasted 11 days, which is how long it took him to read Dr. Lehner's report and Mrs. Okafor's fraud file and explain to his client what a jury of ordinary people who iron napkins, does with a defendant who forged a grandmother's name and let her ration heart pills. After that came the letter. 4 pages, handwritten, and I will keep what it said between Evelyn and me, except for one line, because that one line is the reason things ended the way they did. I told myself you didn't need it, and the day I heard about the food pantry, I threw up, and then I bought you the scarf, and I have hated myself in a quiet, useless way every day since. It was the word useless that I believed. Remorse that flatters itself is a performance. Remorse that calls itself useless has at least met the truth. So this is what I decided, because the deciding was mine. Every dollar came back. The condominium sold in September. Lake properties move fast. And between that, the frozen account, and what Samuel's letter called liquidation of personal assets, meaning the closets and the jewelry and the wine, $276,000 returned, with interest calculated by Samuel at a rate I can only describe as educational. Corinne's $22,000 came back too, in the form of a check that arrived with no note, which told me everything about Corinne I will ever need to know. I did not make the phone call to the prosecutor. I want to be clear-eyed with you about why, because it was not softness. Prison for Evelyn would have put my son through a public trial, made his mother's hunger into courtroom exhibits, and handed the tennis club a decade of theater. Instead, Samuel drafted a confession, full, sworn, notarized, every act admitted in her own hand, which sits in his safe and will walk itself to the county prosecutor if she so much as jaywalks near anyone's money for the rest of her life. She signed it. She lives now in Dayton, works an ordinary job at an ordinary salary, and every month. This was my one flourish, and I permit myself no guilt about it. Every month, she donates $200 to the food pantry at First Methodist, Millbrook, and Carol Whitcomb sends her a thank you card. Carol's cards are very warm. I'm told Evelyn finds them unbearable. Good. That is what educational means. The marriage I stayed out of. That was Nathan's reckoning, not mine, and it is still being reckoned. There was a separation. There is a counselor. There are questions a man has to answer about how he signed whatever was put in front of him for 4 years, and those questions are his homework, not mine. He does it at my kitchen table sometimes. He comes every Sunday now, not calls, comes, and in the fall he showed up with a toolbox and rehung the porch swing with new chain, and neither of us said anything about it, and both of us understood everything about it. And the $276,000? 60 of it went into an annuity that means I will never again do arithmetic in a pharmacy line. Some went to the church, enough that the pantry Carol pretends has too much, now genuinely does. And the rest sits in a trust Samuel built. For Nathan's children, if there are children someday, with one condition written into it in language, Samuel assures me is ironclad. No one manages it alone. 2 signatures, always. Sunlight, always. I have learned my lesson about quiet arrangements, even my own. Last Sunday, Nathan and I sat on that porch swing with our tea, and he asked me how I did it. 16 weeks of silence, he meant. 16 weeks of Easter dinners and Sunday calls, carrying the whole truth alone. I told him what I'll tell you, friend, because I suspect some of you are carrying a folder of your own, even if yours is only kept in your chest for now. Here is what I learned. Being underestimated is not a wound. It is a resource. The world looks at a woman my age and sees someone finished, and that blindness is the deepest pocket you will ever own. Let them think you can barely work your phone. Count quietly. The quiet one counts. And learn the difference between patience and silence, because I confused them for 4 years and it nearly starved me. Silence is swallowing what's being done to you because you're too proud, or too tired, or too afraid of what asking would make you. Patience is knowing exactly what's being done to you and choosing your moment to answer it. Silence costs you everything and pays you nothing. Patience costs the same nights of not sleeping, but it pays. Oh, it pays. If someone in your life has arranged things so that you blame yourself for what they are doing to you, hear an old woman who irons her paper napkins. The shame you're carrying may not be yours. Set it down. Look at the paperwork. In this country, your name is not a decoration, and neither, my dear, are you. If this story stayed with you, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, what would you have done in my place? And from where in the world are you listening? I read every message, and you mean more to me than you know. For more stories like this one, like this video, and subscribe. There is so much more waiting for you. With love and respect. Until next time.